What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Young Guns podcast. If you guys haven't subscribed to our channel already, please click the subscribe button and like this video and share this channel to anyone who loves the sport of hockey. Guys, we have some trade rumors finally to be talking about. And yesterday we found out on the insider trading by Pierre Lebrun that the Canadiens have called teams about, moving guys like Dadonov, Drouin, Hoffman, who've all been healthy scratches from the start of the 2022-2023 season. And a team that's been suffering in terms of forward depth because of injuries is the Washington Capitals. And even though they want to fill holes internally, if things continue to go bad for them, they're dropping games. I do believe that they're gonna have to look to make a trade. They acquired Connor Brown. He's most likely out for the whole season. He was supposed to be replacing Tom Wilson, who's out as well until probably sometime in December. And right now, it's just not looking good for the Capitals in terms of standings. So we're gonna be talking about, does it really make sense to make a trade between the Capitals and the Washington and the Montreal Canadiens, and which player makes the most sense? So, Luca, let's start it off.
Well, I mean, when the news came out yesterday that the Habs were looking to shop one of their forwards, I mean, it wasn't surprising. There's been a lot of weird stuff going on with Dadonov, especially over the last couple of days that have really, have been kind of weird. But I think the Habs are trying to move forward here. Obviously, LeBron, like they said, they pretty much confirmed it. But whether or not it's going to be Washington, I think Washington, it's going to be a tough situation because cap wise, it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for either team. You've got, the Caps, who I believe are at $12 million LTIR space used for Backstrom and Tom Wilson. And now, obviously, Connor Brown. Tom Wilson's expected to be coming back soon. So it's very interesting to see what the Caps are going to try to do. But if the Habs are willing to make a move with the Capitals, there could be potentially something there. Now, the issue is that this would need to be a money in, money out situation, um, kind of like a lot of other deals. And the thing is that I don't really know what Montreal would end up getting because Washington cap wise don't really have any players that are on bad contracts that Montreal would be willing to give up. And either way, if you look at their cap situation here, Washington, they don't really have anybody on their roster that is making a lot of money that can be traded away for a forward. And the Habs are obviously looking for defensemen. The Caps don't have that, so I don't really know what type of deal it would look like. But to
They're
me, I
looking for
feel
a right-handed defenseman, someone to play on the right side.
yeah, exactly. So
Just
I
to be
think
clear.
I think for the Caps, I don't know if the Caps necessarily make sense.
I mean,
To me,
Nicholas
I'd probably
Backstrom is on LTIR, and so is Carl Hagelin as well, and they're most likely not going to be playing this season unless they're activated during the playoffs. So, I mean, there is money to play, but when players start coming back, and if they do come back,
yeah,
that's the problem. Like we had,
exactly.
Joel Edmondson, who played his first game back, with the Canadians against the Winnipeg Jets, and
Last night,
they had to do something. They had to make a decision, either put one of the three guys we named on waivers, or potentially make a trade. Instead, we're all hearing about, apparently Dandonov and his son contracted a virus or an illness of whatever it is exactly, and they need to like essentially make a move. Then they put him on IR. So we're like, okay, I guess this buys them a couple more days, essentially, maybe a week, whatever.
I I look at it as I mean, it is interesting, and the reason it's interesting is because it's going to be one of Dadonov, Joy, or Hoffman. And the reason for that is just because all three of them have been healthy scratches at some point during the season.
And they
And I
don't
think
want to lose Michael Pezzetta. They would
yeah, there's no
rather
point, but
they
there's
would
no
rather
point.
get rid of these three because they're
Yeah,
heavier in contracts.
that's it. They're heavier in contract, and there's no point. I mean, Michael Pezzetta, listen, like he's a 14-13 forward. Like you're not gonna improve with Michael Pezzetta in the lineup, but you're also not gonna get worse with him out of the lineup either.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
he's
it's
not
not a
that
question
expensive.
of like oh if we trade Michael, like, first of all, second of all, like I like Michael Pezzetta, but he doesn't really have value either. Whereas Joey Hoffman and Dadonov do, because the team would be willing to take a top nine forward for all
Dadonov, it
contracts.
makes sense because the Russian connection, because there's a couple of Russians like Kuznetsov, Orlov, and Ovechkin. and he's on an expiring contract, which by the end of the season he's going to be a UFA. So they could potentially do that. But if you're looking for more of a long-term acquisition, it would have to be Mike Hoffman. And looking at Dandonov's stats, not a bad player by any means. And what can they realistically get for Dandonov? Probably like a mid, pick. I would say fourth, fifth, especially with him being a healthy
Listen,
scratch, really
just
diminishes his
give
value.
at this point, honestly, for any of these guys I'm talking about, literally any of these guys, just as long as you give us something, I would take it.
Yeah. So
It's like at this point, it doesn't even matter if it's a seventh over a round pick or future considerations. If a team is willing to take them on, it doesn't even matter what it is, as long as obviously we're not trading away a first
yeah,
round pick. But like,
and Danov's complained about his ice time too. Apparently, his agent confronted Kent Hughes about that. So I think he's more of the likeliest to be traded first. Look, this guy scored 20 goals before, so it's quite possible that he gets moved.
I
And there's
I
also
think
Drouin.
I think, and listen, so I have kind of a theory on how this situation can go. And the reason I have a theory is just because I think that, listen, as much as you know, Montreal fans want to see guys like Mike Hoffman, Drouin moved. I don't necessarily know if Hoffman gets moved just because he's got 2 years left, but I think it's going to be either one of Dadonov or Drouin. To me, I think Drouin, if he is to get moved, makes a lot of sense for a team like the Buffalo Sabres, and I'm going to tell you why. Okay, so Buffalo's off to a really good start this year. I think Drouin can play on their top nine, and they've got the cap space to do it. They've got about $21 million in cap space, so they can definitely take on Drouin. They can even take on Dadonov if they want to. But realistically speaking, if they take on a guy like Drouin, I think on its his skill and stuff under a coach
He
like Don
needs a change
Granato,
of scenery. Since he came to
yeah,
Montreal,
I
expectations
could
are
see
way
that
too high,
working.
and everyone just saying, just for his sake and for everyone's sake, start somewhere fresh,
Yeah,
because right now he's been
and
literally the punching bag for the Montreal Canadiens since joining in 2017,
and
2018,
I think
and he's suffered with mental health issues as well.
yeah,
So there's a lot of pressure playing in the Montreal market,
but
and being from here doesn't help. So I think he needs to go somewhere where there's less pressure, and I think Buffalo does make sense.
well, Buffalo makes sense. And the other thing too is, look, they don't have to give up anything to get him, right? If they want him, they don't have anything to get him. Another team that I think makes sense potentially, and I'm looking at teams that are not necessarily content. Dadonov's got a no trade clause, so maybe him would be harder to move. But a
Why? He
team like
wants playing time.
yeah,
He
but
doesn't
like
like being a healthy scratch.
you also want to play for a contender, right? And I was gonna say because I could say maybe move him to a team like Chicago, right? He'll get top six forward minutes over there. There's a lot of teams that are in the bottom feeding teams. Like if you look at where they at in the NHL, Arizona, Buffalo, Chicago, naming a few, Detroit as well, Anaheim, that can take on these types of contracts.
But
Obviously,
they're
we
not
know
really
that.
bottom feeder teams because Buffalo, New Jersey, and Chicago are surprising and they're doing well. And we all
Well,
expect,
Detroit's struggling.
yeah, Detroit's struggling, yeah, but
You know, another one that maybe could make sense with retained salary, and the reason I'm saying this is just because they have a lot of injuries, but it could make sense because I think they need a little bit of skill, a little bit of tenacity in their lineup as well, and maybe a guy like Dadonov could provide that. A team like Minnesota, they've lost a lot of their forwards due to injuries.
and
They're
Kevin Fiala being traded really hurt
yeah.
them as well.
So and I think they've got about 3.5 million in cap space. I could see a guy maybe like Hoffman, if they're willing to look at that, could be an option
He
for them.
scored he scored over 25 goals multiple times and he had a 36 goal
Yeah.
season as well. The point with all three guys is that the thing they all have in common essentially is that they're all capable of being very good top
Yeah,
six forwards,
yeah.
but just not in Montreal. They need a change of scenery. We're not saying they're gonna start scoring all kinds of goals if they go somewhere else, but they're definitely gonna be
Well,
a lot more useful playing on a team that actually needs one of these guys. And I know their contracts are not the greatest. If I'm mistaken, Mike Hoffman's being paid around
it's
4.5.
4.5. Yeah,
Yeah, 4.5. You have Drouin who's like 5.5, and Dandonov, if I'm
he's
not
at 5.
mistaken, yeah, exactly. And yeah, people are like, oh, the Habs won the Weber trade because at least we got a player in return. But we got essentially a headache in return. Yes, he's still capable, but it all comes down to can can Kent Hughes essentially turn Dandonov into more assets stemming from the Shea Weber trade, which I think is possible because we've
I
seen
think
Kent Hughes do it multiple times.
what I have a feeling is going to happen, and don't quote me on this, but I do think that something's going to happen within the week because it has to, especially with Edmonton coming back. I think that if they can't get a deal done, I have a feeling and I have a feeling that Dadonov probably ends up on waivers.
Is there a
Um,
possibility of terminating one of these guys' contracts?
if they want to mutually do it, sure, but I don't think they're gonna terminate Drouin just because I think Drouin has played well, and I think Drouin this season, I know his numbers don't show it, but
It's more of a
he's actually
project.
he's actually played decently well. And Hoffman, they're not going to terminate his contract either. There's just no point. So I think if they have to do a contract termination and it's a mutual contract termination, I think it would have to be Dadonov, but they're not going to buy him out. It's
Let's
going to
take
be
a let's take a look at Marco D'Amico's
yeah.
article here. Like we were saying before, Connor Brown being out, Nicholas Backstrom and his 9.2 million cap hit. That's up. So right now, the Capitals have used up, 12.225 million of their 15.555 million long-term injury reserve. So there's that. The flexibility, Dandanov and Drouin, like we were saying, on expiring contracts. Um, would rather bite the bullet to either retain 50% on Dandanov or Drouin. That's a possibility as well. Um, so, to make a deal work with the Capitals, the Canadiens are most likely going to have to retain 50%. So there's that. Or they could just, send down Slavkovsky maybe, but I highly doubt it at this point. Um, however, using one of their valuable retention slots means the Canadians could look for a pick or prospect to come back in return, which would be the ideal situation. Creative options. Let's see what they say here. Yeah, obviously,
I
Jonathan.
I just think I just think that there needs to be, I think that no matter what happens in this situation, I don't think Montreal is going to win the deal. What that means is that no matter whether you trade Hoffman, whether you trade Drew, or whether you trade Dadonov, I don't think Montreal's going to get anything in return or anything significant in return, and I wouldn't even be surprised if they add something to get rid of them. Obviously, if they add a first round pick, then no. But if it's anything else, listen, at some point you got to salvage it and you got to kind of just accept it for what it is, and that's it. But a lot of this is Bergevin's mess, and I don't wanna
People are
minimize.
saying, instead of paying Mike Hoffman, what, $4.5 million, you could have given that to Dandino. But I think
You don't even have to
people,
pay him. Like
but
you just didn't
But the
have to pay
problem is
him.
with Dandino, Dano, sorry,
I
my
don't
bad,
know.
Dandino. That's
That
another
that's
ex-Canadiens
your
player.
that's your down to know. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
Philip Dano, sorry. The problem with him is I think he just wanted to move completely away from Montreal and go
Yeah, and I
play
think
somewhere else. California is a beautiful place, and obviously his wife probably wanted to go
he's
somewhere
doing
where there's
well in
less
LA too.
pressure. And he complained about his minutes as well, saying that he was jealous of Suzuki and Kokaniemi,
Yeah.
which Kokaniemi's not a problem because he's gone, but Suzuki was always going to be the number one guy, and Dano wanted to be that, but that was not going to happen in Montreal. He was going to
Yeah.
be at most a second line center, but it is what it is. But guys, we'd like to hear your thoughts. Essentially, Washington Capital fans, Montreal Canadian fans. What are your thoughts? Is this a possibility between these two teams to make a deal with one of these three players involved? Dandanov, Drouin, or Hoffman? What type of deal can we look for if these two teams do strike a deal? What do you want to see in return for one of these players? The Washington Capital fans, what are you willing to give up for one of these players? Are you even interested in one of these three players? We'd like to hear all of that in the comment section below. And is there
Don't
anything
take
else you'd
Hoffman.
like
He
to
sucks.
add, Luca?
Hoffman sucks. That's about it.
Well, we'll see what happens in terms of that. But we just wanted to say, guys, if you're interested in Bet99, they have fantasy hockey, football, and other casino games. You guys could click the link in our description below, and you must be 19 years old and up to play. You guys can use our code YoungGuns1. And if you guys are interested in, donating for the since it is men's mental health month, awareness month, whatever you want to call it. I would strongly donate to one of our close foundations, good friends of ours, the Mind Foundation Canada. They raise funds and awareness to find cures for neurological diseases and disorders. They're currently focused on mental health, so that would be awesome. And guys, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel. I want to hear you. We'll hopefully hear from you soon on the next episode of the Young Guns podcast. And well, that concludes today's episode. We hope that you guys enjoyed it. And just quick news: Chris is taking temporarily absence, a relief of absence, and we'll see how he's doing. But he's struggling a little bit right now, and we're wishing for the best for him. So right now, it's going to be the Chris and Luca show moving forward, and we'll
Yeah.
give you updates on that. And we'd like to thank him for all the work he's done up until this point. But the Young Guns podcast is still going strong, and that's because of you guys. So we'll see you in the
Yeah.
next episode of the Young Guns podcast.